Hey guys, welcome to the Property Panel Podcast. You got myself, Jalen Hardcastle, here with co-host Josh Story, and today we're going to tell you the, question everyone's asking: is it time to buy or hold?
Hey, that's the golden question, man. We got to figure it out. But before we get into that, I do want to thank our title sponsor for this episode. Big shout out to Collier Title Company. If you need deed prep, title work, closings, and more, they're located in Brandenburg, E-Town, and Louisville. You can call us at 270-763-6589. And for this week's sponsor, We Buy Houses. We offer cash and close in as little as 2 weeks. Give us a call at 270-945-5416 or 270-945-7189.
Thank you for that, Josh. And if you or anyone you know would like to be a weekly, monthly, or yearly sponsor, it's 100 weekly, 300 monthly, and 3,000 yearly. You're advertising our intros, outros, as well as intermissions on all social media platforms. And we're actually doing a giveaway on a couple platforms, aren't we, Josh?
Yeah, once we hit 300 followers on Facebook, once we hit 300 followers on Facebook, as well as 500 followers, we're going to be doing a giveaway. I think we're going to be doing some sort of gift card. What that is yet, I don't know, but sign up because it's free, and we'll be giving away, I think, a $100 gift card, something like that. And then for TikTok, once we hit 100 followers, we'll be giving away Property Panel Podcast merch and Cedar Hill Properties merch. So go follow that for some free stuff, and yeah, might as well share it.
Doesn't hurt.
Share it with friends.
Yeah, like, share, subscribe while you're sitting there. Free way to help us out. Helps the podcast grow, and it helps us bring you better and greater information every time we come on this podcast. And we're in the process of building a shelf for our whiskey that we got back here. We wish we could have had it on there to show you, which we will, just because it's beautiful. You know, there's some Willets right there.
That's
Pot
nice.
Still Reserve. It's going to be hanging right here next to Kentucky because that's where the bourbon's from, you know. But now let's go ahead and talk about the current state of the Kentucky market. Obviously me and Josh are the head of the Bluegrass States, so give us a call if you need to buy or sell or anything at all to do with real estate. But you kind of want to kick it off about kind of what the market's doing, give them a little breakdown.
Yeah, up until this point, I felt like the market kind of had slowed down a little bit, and that's typical though for the early months of the year, whether it's taxes, getting started in school, just the whole thing about the first of the year kind of slows down the market anyway. For me personally, I feel like it's definitely started to pick up a lot more in the past few weeks, which is typical of summer. I'm seeing a lot more influx. I think we're going to start getting those days on market down here shortly. I'm not sure what they're hovering at now, but I think those are going to start coming down because they were getting up there. I think rates, which Jay, you might have some more insight on it, but I think they're going to probably stay about the same. They might go up a little bit, might come down a little bit, but I think we're going to be hovering around that 6% for a good while. Unless you know some announcements that I'm not sure of.
No announcements, but I will, to your point, I think I agree with you exponentially. And like you said, the inventory is climbing slowly, which means buyers are getting a little bit more breathing room, but the demand is still outpacing the supply in most areas in Kentucky. And homes that are moving ready and priced to sell are going fast, especially anything under $300,000. That's like the money spot right now. But days on market, like you said, are creeping up a little bit, but we do see those going to start to decline. As you mentioned, interest rates are supposed to be on the decline as well. So, but to your point also, them higher end listings or listings that might need a little work, they're tending to sit, in today's market. So it's pretty much, the shoe that fits is what they're going with.
It depends on what house you got, whether or not it's going to, sell quickly or not. Like, I think there's a house somewhere here in Meade County for $1.7 million. Obviously, that one's going to sit for a while. Not a lot of people are in that range, but any houses under like $300K, like he mentioned, those should be moving a lot quicker than the ones over $300K. Simply for budget reasons, but also newer families, they're probably going to be closer to that 200,000 mark. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of personally what I was seeing. Obviously, we're taking the state statistics, but in our area, I think like that 250. I mean, even 300. Especially because you're not getting anything with the basement under 300. Brand new. You might get a couple new construction double wides for 200. New construction stick built ranches for around 300. And those are still deals, and people don't realize that. And I'm surprised that they're still sitting. But that kind of brings us into our next section, which you already kind of touched based on, is the interest rates and buyer behavior currently. So let's talk about the interest rates. So obviously they're not the historic golden year 3%, 2% that we've seen in some cases, but it's also not the fear-wrenching 8%, 9%, 10% that we've seen in the past couple years. But we're, like you said, staying around that 6%. And honestly, it's kind of struck me surprised that we haven't dropped even more, because I know that a few of the lenders that I talked about thought that we was going to be on a little quicker of a decline, but like you mentioned, we're still kind of steadying out. So
yeah, man, just I think the economy in general is just kind of sketchy overall. Not the housing market per se, but just everything else, and that kind of factors into what the Fed will set the rates at.
right.
As far as current rates, sitting at 6%, like he said, I don't know if we'll see those golden days again at 3. I actually had, a buyer reach out to me yesterday, and they were wondering about interest rates, and I explained to them, the history of them and where they're at now, and they were actually kind of excited that the interest rates are around a 6%. Especially because I mentioned, if in 2-3 years interest rates are down 3%, go ahead and refinance.
Right.
I mean, that's always an option. That's why we historically say date the rate and marry the home. Rates will always change. The house will not. So if you find something that you love, I say you go for it. As long as you're not putting yourself in a bind. If you see a home that you're going to stay in, I think it's worth it. If you're waiting on something like rates to drop.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Justin. I think that's what it means for buyers. Is it means affordability might be a little bit tighter, yes, but serious buyers are still out there. And here's the key: buyers are starting to negotiate again. So we're seeing closing costs paid for. We're seeing some price negotiation, as well as some repairs being made on repair requests, which we haven't seen since prior to 2020. If you're a new buyer, now is the time to get pre-approved and stay locked in and get ready for that right house, because when the perfect property does hit the market and it's priced affordably, it's been going quick.
Oh yeah, and it's the same advice I'd say, and again, it's just advice. You don't have to listen to it. It's just my opinion, but
it's a good one though.
Yeah, it's a good one, because I had a lot of friends of mine. So I bought back in 2019, and then I had a lot of friends of mine 2020, 21, 22, and they were like, I don't want to buy just because prices had went up from 19, interest rates went up from 19. And I just showed them the charts. I was just like, this is just the trend throughout history. Like, it just continues to go up. You're more than welcome to make your decision, but you might be shooting yourself in the foot in a couple of years. And sure enough, if they would have bought in 2020, 21, they'd be in a better spot than buying now. So, I think that trend still continues. You got to stay on the ball. Obviously, call one of us and ask questions. But
and a lot of people think it's, kind of trending the other way, but I agree with Josh on what he says. It's always been, like he said, you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers year after year, and it's a continuous stair step like we've mentioned about. You might have a few times it plateaus, but it more balances out, rather than, hitting a low.
Right, yeah, it's definitely balancing out. But again, if you're in the right spot to purchase and you have a home in mind, I'd say go for it. And also too, I always tell my clients, write an offer. The worst they can say is no. If you're coming in a little bit low, I might tell you we're a little bit low, but hey, I'll still write it up.
Yeah,
the worst they can say is no.
That's
now,
right.
If you're like 200K under or something, 150K
we might
under, I might be like, hey, you might need to find another.
Yeah, let someone else represent you, because I ain't put my name to that. I've actually told a couple people that a couple times because it's so offensive, and they ended up not getting the house, obviously, and then they would have came up to a price that I thought was respectful, and the seller would have negotiated down, but since they came out so low, it actually hurt their chances of even negotiating a deal completely.
I had a listing a couple years back. It was around like 500,000 or so, and I had a lady call, and she was like, "Hey, you think they'd take 350?" I was like, "Ma'am, it cost 450 to build.
Right?
So they're not taking 350." And she was surprised by that,
but yeah, they seem to be like,
we're not giving you numbers to try to get you under contract or sway you a certain way. We're giving you what the market is telling us. If we're trying to give you an offer price, it's because we went and looked at very similar homes and what they sold for in the past year, and got as close to a market value as we can. We're not just pulling it out just to try to sell it quicker for us to make a quick buck. It's just what the market's telling us. And we're very, clear and upfront about that. We can, show you our comps and kind of break it down for you. But
And that kind of leads us into the next point, like you're talking about with the comps, is should sellers list at or below market value right now? And I know we've touched base on this many times, but what are your opinions on that, Josh?
I'm saying below or at.
Okay.
Below or at.
That was the question.
Now,
should they be at below or at market value?
Well, sometimes I feel like you can push.
This is your opinion.
You can push it up a little bit over if the market is like.
I'm saying right now. We're talking about today's market.
Yeah, I would say yes.
No, but Josh is right, and what I was trying to get at, it's kind of like a trick question. So everyone wants market value for the home, but especially right now, they want to try and get above market value, and that's actually going to hurt your chances more often than not. And if we actually list just below market value, we're getting more people in the door, and we're getting multiple offers, which is actually driving up the price. Yep. And even at market value, I think because the market is so finicky at the moment, because interest rates and buyers, are at a little bit of a tighter budget, things have to be priced accordingly, and it has to be a perfect picture. And I honestly think even listing at market value hurts it right now, because yes, I mean that's a good price for the home, but that's top value, top dollar, and I think people, even if it's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 worth of equity from market value, I think it makes a tremendous amount of difference. I mean, even in this house I just listed this week, another agent had it listed $250,000, which was above market value. They had showings like they do. I mean, me and you have both had listings that are listed at market value currently, especially that have been showing but no offers. And we're like, what the hell's going on? Especially our Rabbit right now. I mean, we know there's some things that could be fixed, but at the end of the day, it's priced accordingly and people are looking at it. So it's like, what the hell? But we started a little above market value, and that's on our own personal property. So that's how we even make mistakes as realtor, trying to be a little, get a little much than we should sometimes. But we also listed at the wrong time of the year in the fall, rather than if we listed right now when we originally listed, that price would be accordingly. Yep. But back to our point, I think whenever you list below market value, it's going to bring it up. And then whenever you list above market value, oh my gosh, I mean, your golden time is for them showings is within the first week. And if you're at a too high of a price in that first week, you missed your window. Yep. And then you're trending downward on the market. So I think, personally, I don't mind a list of market value still, but I mean, even my other listing I told him it was way too high. I did list it because there's a family friend, and it ended up going under contract. And sometimes it does that. Like to your point, you I think mentioned him, but you should not think that's for par for the course.
Yeah, it's about reading the market, and like you said, I think listing below is definitely going to get you. Probably it's just going to get you back up to market value anyway. Mm-hmm. But
right,
the time to sell could be, like you said, a month. Mm-hmm. Or like a few weeks to get contract versus a couple months.
And even the difference in maybe paying closing costs and something, and closing costs are ramping up right now, $7,000 to $10,000.
If you get a multiple offer situation, that's kind of one of the things that is leveraged is closing costs. Mm-hmm. So one of the better offers might not have closing costs. So like you said, I agree with that. Now, if the market was just everything's flying off the shelf like hotcakes, then we'd be kind of at market value.
Definitely
maybe pushing it.
Yeah. But which like 2020, 2022, as Josh, when he started, that's what, it was. And that market was exceptional for us, anyways. And for buyers and sellers alike, you got great deals on your homes, even though you were paying over market value at the time. Look at what the market value's increased just since those, times, just like Josh mentioned earlier in the podcast. Even to buy now when prices are at an all-time high, they're still going to get higher. And especially if these interest rates do decline, get in now, like you mentioned, and refinance that rate whenever it does drop.
Date the rate.
Get some equity out of that house. Yep.
Get some equity. Build some equity. Don't rent if you can avoid it. Nothing wrong with renting.
Nothing wrong with it.
If you can pay your own mortgage, that's better.
And then even like people, so we do a lot with some people that are going to be here for a year or two for New Quarry, maybe even Fort Knox, and they justify renting for that, but I wouldn't even try and justify it. I mean, obviously, it depends on the time of year when you're going to move and your situation, yes. But I think even if you can get that house now in a year or two, the value is going to be a little bit more up. You're going to have that payment down, so you could even rent that property out over the years and use that leverage for more existing properties in the future.
Yeah, I mean, rent rates are typically higher than mortgages. That's just how it works because whoever owns the property has to pay their mortgage. So, that's just kind of how it works. But, you can get in a house for sometimes 0% down. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely give us a call. But
and we got a bunch of homes on the market that'll qualify for that right now, too.
Yeah.
Those brand new construction, double wides, they're going for 0% down, 100% financing, and 30-year terms. So your payments are around $1,600 a month, maybe a little more if with the 0% financing. Or 100% financing, so
get in while you can.
That's good stuff, and they come with a 1-year builder warranty. We got a lot of experience in those. We're installing them. We're actually becoming a mobile home dealer here at Cedar Hill Properties. We're Copper Creek Homes now as well, so you might see some coming in, sitting in front. We might have some homes sitting in front and back of the office.
That'd be cool.
That's gonna be a pretty cool deal. But
Are we good on this?
Whatever.
One more thing to mention.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to touch base on the NAR settlement.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it really hadn't changed much.
So
it hasn't changed too much. I do see a little bit, but not.
I noticed that we're getting less commission. So
2.5 becoming
usually where, not that there's a standard or anything, but I'm gonna work for 3%. Everyone's asking for 3% and settling for about 2.5 on average. It seems like in my deals, and I mean that's typically what I get anyways. But at the same time, I want to fight for that 3%, and I've noticed more agents denying my commission, and we've actually had to walk away from deals that we're giving full asking on. And actually, one of these deals is a $500,000 deal I just got under contract recently. They didn't want to pay me but 1.9% commission or 1% commission, something like that, off a $500,000 deal.
Did the other agent get more?
Oh yeah, they got what they wanted.
On, guys, come on, listing agents.
And so we decided to walk away, and we actually, my buyers were wanting to pay it, and I was like, I've never had my buyers pay it. I ain't starting now. And I was like, what you could do is pay your closing costs, because that's going to be cheaper than my commission anyways, And in today's market, it's not a given that sellers are going to pay closing costs, because it is still kind of a buyers and sellers market,
And in my opinion, I think the buyers agents work harder anyway.
I do too. I agree, because we're showing them houses and stuff. Like all you got to do is a listing.
You go take your photos, your documents signed. Then you kind of just sit back and relax and post about it and wait for some showings to come through.
Yeah.
A buyer, you might be showing 5 houses a weekend for 6 months before you find something. That is way more work, in my opinion, than a list.
It's offensive whenever they don't. And the fact that you can't put it on there, you got to literally text the agents and ask. And then it kind of, if they're like, we're not offering, it's like, oh, do I put in my time and effort to go show it because I'm not going to have my buyers do it? Well, obviously, I'm going to do my due diligence. But at the same time, are we going to have to negotiate more? Like, I mean, I wish that we didn't have to do it.
Well, in my opinion, too, if you're going to give the buyer agent 2%, then you better be taking 2% yourself.
Yep, I agree.
If that's the deal, then that's the deal, because everybody knows the buyer's agent's dealing with the lenders, the inspections, the scheduling. The listing agent just answers the phone call and shoots a few texts.
Even before this NAR stuff, I used to have this agent. She'd list for 6%, try and offer me 2.5%, and her get 3.5%. And I knew this agent really well. Worked with her many times, and I was offended when she did that. And I said, I ain't doing this. Well, that's just how I do. We put in so much. I said, don't you sit here and lie to me. I said, I've listed and bought and sold. I know how this works, and you got a lot easier than us. And not to take away from listing agents, because they do hard work, and some listings are more extravagant than others. You might have to help the seller out, get some contractors.
There's definitely work involved with selling agents.
80% of the time, buyers agents are putting more of the effort in. I'd say 80% versus the 20% of the work. Yeah, and you're bringing the money.
You're bringing the money to.
And sellers always want to think, oh, I'm paying for it. No, the buyers are technically paying for it. If it wasn't for them, no one would be buying your home.
Yeah, you're selling. The buyers are bringing the money for you to have money.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's just my opinion. But as far as the NAR settlement, I guess I do see that commissions have dropped a little bit. Other than that, I'm not. I'm not seeing like buyers having to pay commission too.
And I think it's more like the buyers and sellers are asking. Like buyers are kind of scared the buyers a little bit, but it also opened it up for sellers, because sellers are like, "Ooh, that's something I can cut out," and buyers are like, "Ooh, that's something I have to add." When in reality, like you said, it hadn't really changed as far as that goes, because we're still negotiating how we should. So yes, but I just think it's shady how some of the agents try and pull it, or they'll get a listing like that. I ain't even gonna talk anymore on that. I'll probably run into some laws that I'm breaking with car or whatever, but I ain't getting into that. Let's do it. Let's do the outro.
Yeah. Let's do the outro. But thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you.
I don't know. Is there anything coming up?
Hold on. I went too quick. The only thing that's coming up is me kicking some ass in golf in a couple weeks next weekend. But Josh's ass, or actually Josh is on my team, so we're kicking my papa and John's ass. If they're watching this, John.
Yeah, you're going down.
You're going down. And shout out to, I think is it Hermitage or Lafayette? That's what it is. Lafayette Golf Course in Rough River. We're going to be going out there, talking to the owner, and hopefully negotiating some deals with him for golf and Airbnb. So.
Hey, golf and business go together like
they do too. I mean, everyone in every business seems to golf to do things.
Everybody golfs, man.
And I swear I make money on the course. I get listings, I get sellings, I've wrote contracts.
I bring my laptop often on the golf course to write contracts and stuff.
That's how dedicated we are.
But it's a great time. It's a relief, stress relief. I love it.
It is. But, we need to go again. It's been too long. A couple weeks. Couple weeks too long.
Let's go in these suits.
I would rip this suit in half if I tried to do anything right now.
In about 30 minutes. Sweat.
But no, yeah, thank you guys for watching, and Josh.
Yep, thank you guys. Big shout out to our title sponsor for this episode, Collier Title Company. If you need deed prep, title work, closings, and more, they're located in Brandenburg, E-Town, and Louisville. You can call them at 270-763-6589. And for this week's sponsor, We Buy Houses, we can offer cash and close in as little as 2 weeks. Give us a call at 270-945-5416 or 270-945-7189. Thank you guys.